Return of the Obra Dinn is a game created by Lucas Pope that was released on October 18th, 2018. I've heard a lot of people talk at length about the way that Return of the Obra Dinn handles its gameplay, but I have not seen much discussion of the literary merit of the game. In Return of the Obra Dinn, Lucas Pope touches on a variety of themes, including justice, truth, trauma, and legacy. Obra Dinn's presentation of these themes is unique because of the way that the story is told using vignettes and documents. Justice is a major recurring topic on the ship. From the player's first interactions with the ship and the book that accompanies the story, we are shown this sketch depicting an execution titled Justice at Sea. It is used by players to aid in establishing continuity between different vignettes, so the players are looking at it often. The title of the sketch primes us with the idea of justice, even if we aren't fully aware of it, or if we forget about it as we play. I couldn't forget. As I went through the game, I kept thinking to myself, who is in the right here? Is this what justice is? Seeing these violent, awful deaths made me wonder if any of these people were doing the right thing, or if there was a right thing to do at all in these scenarios. Brennan is my favorite character in the game. He was a competent worker, he was present often throughout the game, and he was one of the first faces I got to know on the ship. In Escape Part 4, Brennan violently ends a failed mutiny attempt. Although I assumed he was enacting justice, I was shocked at the end when the East India Company fined him, ruling that the murder was unjustified regardless of the reason or context. In the scene Murder Part 2, players quickly realize that they are getting a full 360 view of the events depicted in that Justice at Sea sketch. For those who forgot how the sketch is depicting an execution, this is quite the gut punch. The thing is, now that we can see and especially hear the scene, we realize that the man being executed doesn't speak English, and Miss Lim is yelling desperately that he didn't do it, but because of the language barrier, she gets ignored. As players, we get to know that Hok Sang Lao is innocent. He didn't kill Nunzio Pasqua. We have no power to change his fate, no matter how unjust it is. All we can do is write what happened. Or not even that. All we can write is how he died and who killed him. Justice, as a written legacy of the crimes that were committed, lacks that nuance that we get to see as players. As the YouTuber Demon Apologist pointed out, by the time we see the sketch Justice at Sea, most do not question its accuracy, instead focusing on the identities it portrays. If it's used as a resource and authority on connecting faces between vignettes, it must be accurate, right? Lucas Pope could never lie to us. But what if he does? When Demon Apologist pointed out the sketch, I immediately realized that the way that the artist depicted the scene is not entirely accurate to the reality of the scene. Lucas Pope uses the artist character to show how the truth is distorted even in trusted sources, like the items we use to understand the events that happened on the Obra Dinn. This is one of the many aspects of Return of the Obra Dinn that I find the most fascinating. One might think that seeing the moment that someone died would be the ideal scenario for understanding the facts surrounding a murder. I've heard at least one fictional detective remark that if only we were there, we would know what really happened. But Return of the Obra Dinn shows that being a fly on the wall doesn't make the search for the truth any simpler. If it was easy, would there be much of a game? As the inspector, players have the ability to be the arbiter of the truth, to decide what really happened on the Obra Dinn. The verb decide is very intentional because the inspector does not have to be entirely correct about the truth. They just have to decide who is at fault for each death that occurred on the ship. We know as much because of the achievement for the game called The Captain Did It, where the player must incorrectly identify each death on the Obra Dinn, saying that everything was done by the captain. The game does affirm that this is not the truth, both as the book does not confirm any fates and that Jane Bird tells you as much in her letter, but the option to get every fate incorrect even after inspecting the ship shows that even if you are given an ideal scenario for solving a murder, you might not be able to truly know what happened. Even though players are able to fill in the fates of most of the characters on the Obra Dinn, some are written by the inspector for the player, and they often lack objectivity, adding adjectives like terrible or brave. Return of the Obra Dinn shows how much power is in the hands of those we trust to tell us the truth and give us the unbiased facts. The truth no longer belongs to the deceased, the primary sources. Now the truth is in the legacy that the inspector is able to write for them. Circling back to when I mentioned that letter from Jane Bird, at the end of the game, depending on how successful the player is at defining the fates on the ship, Jane Bird will send a letter to the player with the details about the fate of Henry Evans. We assume that he is the owner of the Memento Mortem, the watch that is used throughout the game to see the vignettes, and the book that the player uses to write down the fates and names of the people on the Obra Dinn. In the opening pages of the book, he details that his every intention was to tell the ship's strange tale within the pages of the book. After sending the book to Henry, if all fates are correct, Jane Bird will mail it back to you with a letter that tells you that Henry Evans has passed away, and that, as for the three of us that remain, the Obra Dinn is a distant memory and a dreadful chapter in our lives that we wish to forget. What happened on the Obra Dinn was complicated and traumatic, and although Jane Bird wishes that she could let go of that trauma, it has obviously changed her profoundly and affected her more than she wishes. If Jane Bird truly was able to let go of the memories and the trauma she endured on the Obra Dinn, she would be back in England, not in Morocco taking care of Henry Evans in his final years, and keeping in touch with the other survivors. She says she wants to forget, but she can't. The Obra Dinn haunts her. In the game, we see a variety of reactions and effects of trauma on the characters, from the captain ending his life because of the trauma, to Nathan Peters being pushed to murder by his grief, to Henry seeking the truth by giving up his companion for it, to Jane Bird directly telling you that she doesn't want to think of or remember it at all. There is no singular reaction to grief, but trauma permeates these characters' lives and decisions even when they want to get away from it. The Obra Dinn haunts these characters and lives on as a major part of their legacy, whether they want it to or not. Speaking of legacy, what is legacy? For the victims of the Obra Dinn, their legacy is the ship. For players, the Inspector and the East India Company, these people are best known only for what they did on the ship and how they died. We know very little about who these people were before they boarded. Maybe a nationality here, a work history there, a shared name, or even a moment together to tell us what these people were like before they left for the sea. But at the end of the day, their legacy will be who they killed and how they died. When I played the game for the first time, my favorite scene was this one. Escape Part 6.
Oh no, you're cut.
Don't leave me.
Bear up, son. I'll stay with you.
Tell Pete's mother I tried my best.
Aye.
To pull him back, to save him.
You tell her yourself. Brennan! Bring the surgeon's kit!
This scene killed me. I was floored. In this scene, William Hoskett is so tender. He's so kind. You can tell he really cares about Thomas. But the further I got into the game, and the more time I had to think about that moment, the more I realized that the game doesn't care about it at all. You're not supposed to care. You have already identified William Hoskett and his fate by that point, so this moment doesn't really make a difference for him. His legacy as written is that he was shot by the captain and his estate was fined £25 for attempted mutiny. That's all he gets. Nothing about how he was on the ship with his sister and working with his brother-in-law. Nothing of him showing one of the few acts of compassion seen on the ship. It doesn't change the way his legacy is written, because at the end of the game, we do not read obituaries. We don't hear about the families that these people had, or the things that were left behind of them. We see dollar amounts associated with their lives. As players, we see these people at their best, most heroic, most compassionate moments. But all we are left with is a book that tells us their name and their death, and a list telling us how much their life was worth to the East India Company. The truth of these characters, who they were, what kind of person they were, the value of their lives. All of these things are not theirs to define or decide. The inspector and the player are the ones with all of the power to create a legacy. This even applies to the survivors, as their lives are compressed down to the little we get to know about them, and their value is only defined by their decision to abandon the ship. Obra Dinn, at a first glance, is a fairly simple story about people getting killed in multiple different ways. However, the game has a lot to say about how justice lacks nuance. The truth is subjective, and even the most objective perspectives have inaccuracies and bias. Grief and trauma affects the survivors and some of the deceased crew members differently, and how legacy is so far outside of our own control, so that at the end of the day, it is up to others to decide our fates. Memento mortem. Remember death.